This week on the Fair Dinkum department, we're going with 6 topics. We've got a lot to get off our chest. Let's get through it. The Broncos cheating with the Ben Hunt play? Sticking with Ben Hunt. Do the Dragons need to cut ties with Benny Hunt? Should New South Wales make sweeping changes? Interested to hear your thoughts on that. We've spoken about it a fair bit. Could the Johns brothers fix the Blues? Was Justin Holbrook hard done by the Titans? I think so. And have the Bulldogs fumbled their recruitment/retention? Outrage. There's bloody heaps of it. We're going to decide if it's real or ridiculous. I'm Chris Danks. You're Liam O'Loughlin. We are the Fair Dinkum department. A bit of brief round 17 chatter for me. Titans was the game of the round.
I'm going to say the same as well.
Yeah.
It was a big crowd at Suncorp after being there and experiencing what that stadium's like, and then seeing it packed out again for an NRL game, Sunday Arvo. Pretty low scoring game. I expected a lot of points, and the Titans pulled off a massive upset. I think Broncos had like 5 disallowed tries as well. So there's plenty of drama, plenty of excitement despite a low scoring game.
First time we've ever agreed on game of the round. This is what happens when we have a week off.
I think so. Well, it certainly wasn't Friday night, but I'm sure we'll get into that shortly.
There's a lot to... Do we get into it now? Ben Hunt. This has been recorded on a Monday morning, so as we all know, things are changing pretty rapidly. But this is what we know so far. Do you want to give us the backstory?
Yeah, so news came out midway through Origin camp, so it would have been about 7-8 days ago now that Ben Hunt had formally requested a release from the Dragons. He confirmed that to Buzz Rothfield, said that he had asked the club and put it to them that he wants out. It's probably been a long time coming, even though he did re-sign until 2025 about 8-9 months ago, back end of last year. At the time, Hook was still in charge as coach. Obviously, those two have such a strong, long-standing relationship from their time at the Broncos. Hook's obviously not there anymore. Shane Flanagan's come in, but I believe, from what I understand, is this release was in the works before Flano was appointed, so I'm not sure if that will change anything moving forward. But it seems like Benny's pretty keen to get back home to Queensland.
Yeah.
Why he wasn't that keen to do it 8-9 months ago, I'm not entirely sure, but that's a personal choice for him. But it leaves a few parties in a tricky situation.
It really does. Do you think that, aside from just being a Dragons fan, but just as a fan on the hill, that a lot of it comes down to there was promises made about the Dragons basically beefing up their roster, being a more competitive team, and maybe Benny Hunt doesn't think that's happened?
Yeah, well, it hasn't. It hasn't yet, has it? The proof's in the pudding. They're running last. They haven't recruited anyone of note for this season. Last year they added Moses Sully and Jaden Su'a, and Francis Molo as well. There were some decent pickups, but this year they haven't really changed much. They had yet to sign anyone of note for next season. We know that they've got a strong junior base, but that's only going to get you so far. You need marquee names, and Hunt is the marquee man at the Dragons, but they don't have anyone else, especially in the forwards. So there haven't been the changes that Benny was after, and that's why he's ultimately, looking for an early exit with 2.5 years to run on his contract.
Interesting to note, when he did text Buzz, it didn't say an immediate release. So maybe it is until... It would make more sense if it was at the end of the year, I'd think.
Yeah, from what I can gather, it will be for the end of the year.
Yeah.
The talk about him moving on for the last 9 or 10 rounds this season might not be 100% on the money. I'm sure there is interest from clubs near the top of the ladder. Obviously Brisbane have been mentioned in the past few days as having interest in him. Kevin Walters has publicly said that if he is available, he is on the market, they'll take a look at it. So if push comes to shove and Ben does find a way to get out immediately, I'm sure there'll be 16 clubs looking to acquire his services. But for 2024 and 25, it seems like the Titans are probably at the top of the list at this stage.
You'd think so. We'll stick with the Broncos side of it, because there's 35 different things we can talk about with this whole saga.
Yeah.
So the Broncos have said, as you said, Kevin Walters come out and said, of course we'd be interested. Who wouldn't be interested? They're copping a little bit of stick about that, about maybe this is some form of cheating, which I think we both agree is a little bit spicy, and it probably is. Interesting that this kind of stuff has happened, like player transfers have happened a fair bit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you even go back to last year, right? And, well, it wasn't a player transfer, but remember what the Dolphins were doing with Munster? Like, they were so thirsty for him in the media. Like, that was me, kind of mid-2000s, Northies on the dance floor thirsty. It was disgusting. You're like, get some respect for yourself. So this is nothing really new. Tavita Pangai Jr., when he was turfed by the Broncos, went to Panthers.
Yeah, so he signed for the Bulldogs for the following season, but didn't have a club for the back end of the year. So the Panthers said, look, if you want to come and try and win a premiership with us, feel free to do so. Before he went on to the Bulldogs, it was never going to be a long-term deal. So that's kind of the talk, I suppose, if Benny was to go to the Broncos for the back end of this year. The optics of it don't look great.
Yeah.
But
it's certainly not a priest like Nofaluma when he went from West Tigers to Melbourne Storm.
Yeah, just like an on loan thing. But you're going to going from a team that's probably going to finish with a wooden spoon to go try and win a premiership with 2.5 months left in the competition. It's not a great look.
Yeah.
It's so messy, but then again, so is everything to do with contracts in the NRL. So I'm not going to begrudge the Broncos too much. Obviously, there'll be claims of tampering and whatnot.
Oh, of course.
But that's managers and that's the media as well, playing it up, and it'll be interesting to see if he does get a release immediately. I have a feeling he won't, because I think the Dragons will probably play hardball. And even then, for 2024 and 25, you got to remember he can't negotiate with a rival club, technically speaking, until November 1 of next year. So, that's another well over a year until he's actually allowed to do that. So if, another club, the Titans or the Dolphins up there want him, they're going to have to either cough up a transfer fee, I'd imagine, or a player in return. Mo Fodawaker, if you're listening. Look good in red and white.
Yeah, call me. I definitely won't be the Dolphins. You're trusting what Wayne Bennett says here, but he's kind of ruled them out already. But if we're going to go through just the first topic, are the Broncos cheating with this Hunt play?
No, they're not cheating. That's ridiculous, because there's plenty of other clubs that have already been linked to him as well. Kevin Walters is just the one that's come out and said publicly they'd be keen.
Yeah.
So look, if he does end up there, it's not a great look, but that's the way rugby league works. It's a business at the end of the day. You're not here to make friends, and if you put a few noses out of joint to win a premiership, so be it.
All right, so that's topic one out of the way of a 3-part series. No, so moving on to, I guess, maybe from the Dragons side of it, they do have some juniors coming through. Let's say right now, if they did part ways with Benny Hunt today after the meeting, they'd save about $300K on their cap. And then there's the savings for next year as well.
And the year after.
Yeah. So there's an upside to it for a team which... Yeah.
Even a war chest.
There's definitely upside to it for a team which, has struggled to attract marquee talent in the past. Just as a Dragons fan, which way do you see it? Would you like them to part ways now?
I think for all parties is probably the right way to go. Whether it happens now or at the end of the year, I feel like it's going to happen. It's going to be hard to keep a player that wants out, and he can play the compassionate grounds card as well if he wants to move back to family, and that's fair enough. That's a personal thing on Ben's behalf, but I don't think it's worth the Dragons carrying around a player that doesn't want to be there for 2 years on huge coin, and like people bringing up the Gordon Tallis scenario from like 25 years ago. It's not going to happen. There's no way in the world that a club is ever going to make someone sit on the sidelines that's earning $1 million a year or close enough. So that's out of the question. So I think at the end of the day, the best decision for the Dragons will be, look, they're going to suffer on the field because of it, because Ben Hunt is their best player. He's their marquee man in the short term, but in the long term, hopefully it will allow Shane Flanagan and whoever's in that football department moving forward to be able to recruit some marquee names, especially in the forwards, because that's where they have struggled for quite a while since guys like Paul Vaughan and Tyson Frizzell have moved on, or Tarek Sims, kind of was coming towards the end of his career. They haven't been able to, pack too much punch through the middle, and then obviously Jack DeBellin missed like 2.5 years as well. So they've struggled in the forwards for a little while. So they need some marquee names there. You
were there at the presser on Friday night. What was it like watching Benny Hunt? What did he seem like?
It was so grim. I actually I've got to give him credit for fronting up and facing the media. He very could have easily said, I'm not doing it, and the club could have said, it's Jack DeBellin's 200th game, we'll get him in there to talk about his career and and the performance and whatnot. He obviously captained the side a few weeks ago as well, Bomber. So they could have easily done that, but Benny said no. As long as I'm the captain of this club, I'm going to front up. And yeah, got to respect him for doing that. But it was real grim viewing. He just looked so defeated and dejected, which is fair enough after the way they performed too.
Yeah.
But coming off an Origin win to come back to that, it's probably just a reminder of why he is wanting out, because things have been poor for a long time. Things aren't really changing too much. So yeah, it was pretty flat to watch.
It's interesting on Wednesday night watching the vision of Maroons in the dressing room afterwards. He went with a 4X bottle, not a 4X can, strangely enough. But he was sitting in the corner, fielding 35 questions from journos about the Dragon stuff, surrounded by some of the best players in the game, who are all on winning teams or mostly on winning teams. Yeah, I think you can understand a little bit from his point of view that it's tough seeing not even progress. Probably, I think the Dragons are sliding more than anything.
Yeah, 100%. They're like, I would say, if Ben Hunt goes, especially after the way they performed against the Warriors the other night at home, that's rock bottom.
Yeah.
Well, you'd hope it would be rock bottom for the club, and then they start a long-term rebuild and not trying to build their success around a 33-year-old halfback that misses more tackles than any other halfback in the comp. So they need to. Yeah, I think personally, for all parties, it's probably the best decision to move on, as much as it will hurt them in the short term.
Who's your halves for next year then, assuming he goes?
Well, Bud has said publicly all along that he wants to play 7. He's been forced to play a bit of dummy half off the bench, and he's kind of cemented himself in the 5'8" role at the moment. Junior Amon's been pushed back to the bench. We've heard so much about this Dragons crop of Sloan Amon, the Feagai brothers, and Bud Sullivan coming through. Look, it'll be interesting to see if they do go to market for another playmaker, if they do lose Ben Hunt, or if they just show full faith in these young guys. I hope they do, personally. At least for next year. I know Junior's off at the end of 24. He'll probably receive a bit of interest if he doesn't re-sign. Bud is off at 25. Sloane's 25 as well. So you've got 2 years for two of them, and 12 months with Junior. So I hope they do invest. But there's plenty of players out there that they could look at. Obviously, Luke Brooks is the big one who's looking for a way out of the Tigers. Braden Trindle and Connor Tracy are 2 players at Cronulla that can't seem to get a permanent run in the side, and they could fix up some areas in the spine, especially Connor Tracy had so much speed, and then Trindle's just a good organiser. So they're 2 guys the Dragons could look at, but I think if Benny's going, I think they'd be best placed looking to attract a big name forward or 2, as opposed to signing halves and just invest in these young guys and see how they go. Yeah,
I'm 100% with you. So, real or ridiculous, the Dragons need to cut ties with Ben Hunt.
Real.
Yeah,
I think so.
Do it now while you can.
Yeah.
Oh God! All right, Origin. That was obviously we've seen New South Wales lose a lot.
Oh yeah.
But that was, and I've spoken to a few people about it. I couldn't sleep afterwards. Just so angry about that performance, and I feel horrible for Damien Cook, who was probably one of the better players. I think Cameron Munster actually came out and said he was the best player for New South Wales.
Yeah.
He was just thrown
wasn't
under.
Much to compete with though, was it?
He was just thrown under a bus. Should New South Wales make sweeping changes the sequel? I think this is probably the trilogy or so now.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it after game 1 when they were quite disappointing. People calling for Teddy's head and changes in the halves, and then obviously Cleary got injured and Latrell's out and now Turbo's out, so they're not going to have a choice. They're going to have to make changes for game 3. But
we start with the coach first. So Fittler obviously did have a contract clause where he could trigger an extension if he did win. Obviously, that hasn't happened. I thought we were onto something when we were talking last week about Des Hasler possibly being a smoky. Clearly not happening now.
No, that's not happening, is it?
New South Wales Rugby League have come out and said they're not going to go down the club coaches thing. They've had that policy since 2010, which I think is a smart idea. It's not those 6 to 8 weeks of Origin. It's all the other crap you have to do outside of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a full-time gig. So, oh God, where do we start? We'll start with the Johns brothers. Every time anything goes wrong with New South Wales, it's always the Johns brothers will save us. Joey is part of camp as an assistant coach, but from what I've seen, at least of camps, he's there for really a day and a bit. more of a vibes, and he obviously just works with the halves, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
He's not as hands-on as maybe some people think. Matty's obviously not there because he's got 8,000 media commitments. Would you, if you were part of New South Wales Rugby League, would you even offer the role to the Johns brothers?
Well,
Assuming they're talking at the time.
Well, they're not, so
Yeah.
that'd be the first thing. I would have a conversation with Matty Johns, yeah. He's like, I would regard him as one of the smartest, footy brains out there. I know he doesn't have much experience in terms of coaching, but neither did Billy Slater. And Matty Johns is that same ilk, in my opinion, in terms of, just football knowledge and football smarts. Obviously wasn't as good a player as his brother, but I think in terms of coaching, he could be certainly one they'd look at. Don't think he'd be able to do it with all of his commitments. I think it'd be too hard. Joey, he doesn't scream head coach to me, I've got to be perfectly honest. I know there was chat a few years ago about Matty and Joey both possibly wanting to coach Samoa.
Samoa, yeah.
Yeah, which, could have been cool. Would have been nice to see how they would work together, but I just don't think Joey is a head coach, and then I don't think Matty is going to have the time or the want to do it right now. Not saying it'll never happen, but right now I just don't think that's going to happen, which leaves the question, who the hell do they go with? Because there's not much out there in terms of coaches. Is there anyone that springs to your mind as a
No, there is not.
potential New South Wales coach?
No. What I think Joey was at his best? Remember what he used to do at half-time, and he had the massive screen, which he'd just squiggle on?
Oh, yeah.
The breakdowns? That was where he was sick. Yeah. And his suit that was 2 sizes too small, just there doing that. That was awesome. But I think there was a really interesting thing said by Ice on our sister podcast, as Flows, 2 weeks ago, speaking of Wade Graham. And he's like, the Maroons are in such a great period now. All the guys who are playing right now, they grew up idolising Billy Slater, Cameron Thurston, Jonathan Thurston, but also I love Cameron Thurston. And Cameron Smith, obviously. The Blues don't have that.
No.
You got Mary and Bedsy, who are both greats of the game in their time, but they were probably maybe one age ahead in terms of they don't really look at them the same way as the Queenslanders look at their coach. Joey would fix that because he's an immortal.
Yeah.
But when that could get him over the line, I just don't think so.
What my question, I suppose, is, do New South Wales look at, a good young coach, perhaps? Like someone that's, maybe not a high-profile guy like Fittler or Joey or Matty or, even Danny Badiris, or someone instead that's, been an assistant for a while at an NRL club.
Like Jason Riles?
Like a Jason Riles, perhaps it could be a stopgap solution. I know he's gone back to the Storm, but it's not in a head coaching or even an assistant coaching capacity, so he might have the bandwidth to do it. John Morris, I know doesn't have a high profile, but he's got NRL coaching experience. He's been around the block. He's an assistant at South Sydney. Benny Hornby, someone like that as well. Someone that's a young coach but doesn't have the high profile, but probably tactically might be better than what they've got at the moment for New South Wales, because I think that's the major concern is not Freddie as a bloke or Freddie as a he's standing in the game.
Yeah.
And his ability to get people to buy in. I think it's more the tactical side of things, and that's why I think if you had a Joey and a Bedsy on a coaching staff with a young guy, it could work. Michael Maguire is out there as well. He could be interested, but there's not anything jumping off the page. Des Hasler would have been perfect, but he's tied up now with the Gold Coast.
Riddle me this. What about a stopgap for next year, 2024, and then Craig Bellamy?
That could be an option, but that would also entail Craig Bellamy retiring, which he said he's going to do for 2 years now and still hasn't done it.
The John Farnham of retiring.
Look, that could be an option they look at, but I don't know if you'd be interested, to be honest. Craig Bellamy's done it before. I think once he finishes, hangs up the clipboard, so to speak, with Melbourne, I think he'll be riding off into the sunset, working in the background at the Storm and just spending time with his family and his grandkids. That's the vibe I get from him. I couldn't imagine him taking on such a high pressure job after being at the Storm for 2 decades. So it's a good thought, but I don't think he would go for it.
So, real or ridiculous? Could the Johns brothers fix the Blues?
They could.
Yeah. I don't know if that really answers the question.
Yeah, they could fix the Blues, but I don't think it will happen. So I think it's a bit of a pipe dream.
Yeah.
At this stage of the game, I think down the track, Matty could potentially get into coaching, and I think he probably will at some stage. But right now, it's like we said, he's got a million jobs and he's earning big bucks at Fox. So I can't see it happening right now.
On to the Titans. We've already mentioned that Justin Holbrook is gone. Des Hasler for 2024. It seemed like it was out of nowhere. There was a clause in Holbrook's contract tied to his winning percentage. But he was alerted, I think it came out on Thursday, he was told at 9:30 a.m. and then we got the release at 11:30. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. He said he was surprised by it. Were you surprised by it?
Oh yeah, came out of nowhere. We got the email pop up and say, Titans coaching update, and I thought, oh no, they've probably, appointed someone for next year, and Holbrook will see out the season, or how those things kind of go. We've seen it with John Morris when they appointed Craig Fitzgibbon. He said, look, if you don't want me for next year, I don't want to be here now. So that would have been probably a fairer way to go about it, but just straight up sacking him. Coming off a win, he said, they were still in the hunt for finals. Very inconsistent, but they're still in the hunt for finals. I found it, very strange. I was very surprised, and Justin Holbrook certainly was as well. I think he said he was pissed off. So you don't usually see coaches come out and be that emotional after getting the turf from a club publicly. Anyway, so it's disappointing for him. He had a really good start at the Titans, and it just hasn't worked on a consistent basis.
It's a strange one because he's clearly a good coach, and the players like him. I mean, I don't think Fafita would have stayed or re-signed if he was off the head coach. It just seems really weird. The Gold Coast Titans in general, it's a bit of a Bermuda Triangle in terms of performance. We all know that. You look at their squad, and now if they're going to have Benny Hunt as well, like they're pretty gun. They're a top 4 team on paper, or very close, but they just. God, they look so disjointed sometimes. Even yesterday, really, the Broncos probably should have won that game.
Yeah. I think Desi is a good fit for what they've got at the Titans. They've got a real young core. Like guys like Tino and Fodawaker, AJ Brimson, Jaden Campbell, they're all still like young guys with more footy ahead of them than behind them. So I think Desi would be a really good guy to come in and steer the ship. He's a good manager. He's had instant success at other clubs when he takes over. We saw it at Canterbury.
Yep.
Made grand finals in 2012 and 2014. Obviously, when he was at Manly across 2 stints, they had some success too. So he's a proven winner. He was the best coach probably on the market alongside Shane Flanagan, who's now at the Dragons, of course. So. Yeah, it was a surprising move just because it came out of nowhere. There were no leaks about it. There were no reports. Yeah,
that's all the NRL does.
Exactly. But I think it's a forward-thinking and a positive move. But I think it did kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah. So the question is, was Justin Holbrook hard done by? Tough. He has a contract. Steve Mitchell and the Titans have abided by that contract. So there was a clause inserted in it. Like I don't think it was anything too surprising, and actually went past when they could have sacked him. It just seems weird that I don't know why you do it now.
Yeah, I would have thought that the better way to go about it would have said, look, we've appointed Des for next year. We're more than happy for you to continue.
Yep.
If he chose not to, that's his prerogative, and it would have been fair enough because we see that happen quite often. But instead, they've just turfed him halfway through the year and without an immediate replacement either. If Des was coming in right away, I could maybe see it, but he's not coming in until November.
Yeah.
So I would have thought it'd make more sense for Justin to stay in charge for the rest of this year if he wanted to. So I would say he's a little bit hard done by in that department.
That's fair. On to the final one. We're nearly there. Talking about the Bulldogs, the family club, some of their recruitment/retention policies. Jake Cavarillo signed with the Dolphins. Your boy Paul Almotti has not re-signed yet, has he?
No, he hasn't yet. He was meeting with Todd Payton a number of weeks ago at Club Rivers down in Riverwood. So that's an interesting little one bubbling away in the background. I'd imagine with Avarillo leaving, they'll probably try and
that was your buzz style spotted, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. But I would imagine Alamotti will end up staying now that Avarillo's moving on.
Yeah.
Bronson Cherry is the man that's coming in next year.
Size of a house.
He's looking big. He looks like he could play in the front row.
Not a townhouse. House.
Yeah.
Man's got land.
But look, a bloke that hasn't played in the NRL since, 2019, I believe, to come in as a replacement for a local junior who's probably been their best player this year, puzzles me a little bit.
I'm sorry, like, we all remember Cherry when he was playing, and he was a gun. He was... People who were probably closely aligned to the Sharks were like, he could play Origin soon. Rah, rah. Don't know if it was that good. But he was an emerging star. Strong as could be, decent defender, and just speed to absolutely burn. Like, it was silly. If you can get back to that, fair enough. But as you said, 4 years on the pine.
It's a massive risk. It's a huge risk. I don't know what kind of money he's on, but regardless of that, I just think it's a massive risk to let Averillo go, who's finally found a position, found a home, playing really good footy under Cameron Ciraldo in the centres, and now they tried to re-sign him, but probably should have tried a little bit harder, or maybe thought a little bit further ahead.
Yeah.
If your dad did have these plans for Paul Alamotti, as had been spoken about for a while, but it's not the only recruitment retention decision I found strange at the Dogs. Pangai has been hit and miss, even though he somehow found his way in the New South Wales team. Luke Thompson.
Luke Thompson's a tough one. So he's on 800k, but also had that horrific ankle injury.
He's had a lot of injuries, but he's also spent a lot of time off the field suspended too.
Yeah.
So he's not played very many games in the 3 years since he's been at the Dogs. Probably not going to be back this year from all reports. So they're not obviously getting value for money there if he's on 800,000. I can't imagine he'll stay at the Bulldogs or in Australia, to be honest. I would assume he's probably going to move back to the UK.
Even your Bezzy Flano, he's on 600k.
Yeah, that's huge coin for a bloke that's playing reserve grade, isn't it? And hasn't done anything of note since arriving at the club. So I can't put on the current regime, because that was a Trent Barrett decision. But yeah, it hasn't worked out, has it?
Wild time. Like, all right, Burton on big money. I think Burton's an absolute gun, but he hasn't probably had his best year.
No, he doesn't have much to work with, but when you're on, the coin and the potential that he has, and they're kind of building the club around Matt now, he probably has needed to perform a little bit better than he has. They let go of Paul Vaughan, which I found strange. I thought he was playing pretty good footy last year at the Dogs, and now he's killing it in the UK. He could come back and walk into a lot of NRL teams at the moment. He's still not that old, and they've missed him, I think, in the middle, to be honest. Kikau obviously spent a lot of this year out injured. Like, a lot of these recruitments and the way that they've played out is not, all Bulldogs' fault.
Yeah.
But some of them, and some of their retention or lack thereof has left me with a few questions.
Yeah. And fair play to any player who's getting decent money. Like, it doesn't matter if you're worth it or if the market says you are. Play on. But, question, have the Bulldogs seemingly fumbled their recruitment of late?
Somewhat, yeah. I think so. This Averillo one is... Yeah, I
thought he'd stay for sure.
Yeah, I thought he would stay 100%. Local junior, grew up in the area. They've invested so much time and effort into him. I don't think he was asking for, a massive paycheck. But, the aura of Wayne Bennett has lured him up to Redcliffe. So fair play to Jake, but I just think they'd have been better off holding on to him and maybe not signing Bronson Cherry. And then obviously Pangai and Thompson haven't worked out. Flanagan certainly hasn't worked out, and they've bungled a few things for me, but they've also got injury concerns, and they've got Stephen Crichton coming in next year. They're building around some young guys in the spine. So at the moment, I would say it's been more misses than hits for the Dogs on the recruitment front, but it could improve by next year or the year after.
Top 8 side next year?
They'd want to be closer than they are right now, that's for sure. If they can keep everyone on the paddock. Especially with Crichton coming in to play fullback, that's probably the big issue for him at the moment. Hayes Perham is, solid, top 30 player, but he's not a first choice fullback. He wouldn't, make any other team in that position. So that's the area of concern. They've highlighted that. They're bringing in Stephen Crichton, and if they can get a fully fit squad on the field, especially in the forwards, they might go closer next year. But right now they've been pretty underwhelming, the Dogs.
Yeah, I agree. Bang. That's it. 6 topics.
Bang.
Done. Did that feel like therapy, or you still a bit too... You got Origin, you got Dragon stuff. It's like I'm coming for you. Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's all happening, but
Yeah.
it's disappointing the way things are going for the Dragons and for New South Wales, but you've sometimes got to hit the bottom to get back to the top, and hopefully that happens at some stage soon.
Footy. It's an abusive relationship. All right, that's it for us this week. We'll see you next week.